to galacticconnection.com, one of the most popular blogs on the World Wide Web today for alternative news. Stay tuned for the latest information on our world shift from enslavement to galactic involvement, as well as current intel on any blockages impeding us from our sovereign birthright. Knowledge and self-mastery are key at this time. Our commitment is to present you with the latest breaking conspiratorial articles, off-world messages, exopolitics, cutting-edge technologies and sciences, and also an ever-significant intertwining of spiritual support and metaphysical scope that one needs to dive down the rabbit hole in search for truth with balance. We are truly on the horizon of a new golden age filled with the promise for more love, worldwide peace, and accelerated intuitive skills, where every living being can exist in cohesion and abundance. It is whatever we envision and dream this new world to be. I say to you now, let's redefine the new world to the beginnings of our own precious heaven on earth. Galactic Connection is here to provide the pulse of Mother Earth through an eclectic range of interviews each Tuesday afternoon from 3 to 4:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Station 2 on BBS Radio, expanding your perspectives on how we can once and for all take back our freedoms, our joy, and our connection with our mighty I Am presence. Our intention remains true to connect hearts and minds everywhere in order to obtain global unity and galactic and universal acceptance. Our discussions will continue to cover anything to do with galactic society and our involvement with our galactic brothers and sisters. Our guests are experts in their fields, and our radio shows have been coined as some of the most thought-provoking out there. In addition to our daily blog, which runs 365 days a year, we also offer a realm of healing services such as our world-renowned implant removal processes, our spiritual past life clearings, our galactic violet ray alchemy from Alexandra, who shares in the lineage of Merlin, and other cutting-edge healing technologies. Check our site out at galacticconnection.com now, sending you a wave of light, love, and inspiration, and a personal hug and thank you for listening to our Galactic Connection radio show and visiting our blog today.
Okay, everybody. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, February 26, 2013. This is Alexandra Meadors of galacticconnection.com, the one-stop hub for daily planetary updates and information on our transition out of the 3T matrix. It's very important for us to expand our perspectives and align our awareness cosmically in order to keep up with the major changes that are characteristic to the ending of this world age. In order to continue bringing forward more thought-provoking material, I have invited my special guest, Cobra, today to review an overview of February's world events through a galactic lens. He and I will be providing this service to all of you each month in order to dissipate fear, clear up any misunderstandings, and add insight into what's really happening behind the daily headlines. So most of you know Cobra and the truth behind his words. But for those that don't, Cobra's a true blue Pleiadian contactee who has been in contact with the underground for 35 years. He has been told to remain anonymous by the Resistance, and he has ongoing communications with beings from Planet X that assists the Resistance movement. As an earthly representative of the Agarthan network and the light forces, he strives to prepare humanity for the up-and-coming event horizon. One thing is for sure, anyone who listens to Cobra's intel will walk away with a more concise picture of how much the light forces are truly supporting us each hour. So with that said, let's bring Cobra on. Hey, Cobra, how are you doing today?
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hey, did you fully recuperate from your London conference?
I would say this experience was pretty much intense because the energy of that city is really huge. So you see, there is one thing after the other leading to the next one, and I'm still in the process of integrating all the changes.
Oh, my gosh. So, what did you feel was so unique from the energies from London?
The first thing I noticed is that the energy has shifted very, very much in the last few years. It has improved quite dramatically. And also, there is a huge potential present in that vortex now, which was not present 3 years ago. And the next thing I noticed was a very strong presence of the resistance movement. While I was traveling by the in the London Underground, I felt very strong presence of resistance operatives around me, and maybe also some other things were happening.
Wow, that is great news. So more support in that location of the globe.
Oh yeah, very much.
Okay, cool. Well, so as I said to you before, I was thinking it was becoming more and more important for everyone to kind of step back and review the major events that are happening since February 1st. I thought we could get your take on them since, I mean, there is literally a whirlwind of information just flooding us. And I'm sure it's very overwhelming at times for everybody around the globe. So I believe you and I are definitely on the same page as far as focusing on the progress of the planet, you know, looking at the silver lining behind each of the headlines. You know, I really love to connect the dots. And I know with your context, you can provide some, you know, really unrivaled insights for all of us. So I think the first question I was going to ask you, just funny, is did a UFO turn off the lights at the Super Bowl?
It was not a UFO. It was coordinated action by the ground personnel of the light forces on the surface of the planet.
Ah, okay. So, but it was deliberate then?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And the intention behind that?
The intention was to show the Cabal they are not omnipresent and omnipowerful any longer on this planet. And as you know, it was done in precisely the best possible moment to have the maximum possible effect psychologically.
Absolutely. I mean, there must have been, billions of people watching that, right?
I think it was about 100 million, but that's a huge number. And definitely it created some questions, and people began to think what's going on.
Interesting. Okay, well, one of the biggest, huge headlines, as you know, for this last month has been Sandy Hook. And my first question to you is, have you checked out wellaware1.com, by the way?
No.
Okay, this is a site, and there's quite a few others that are starting to pop up that review biometrics of the face. And they are actually proving very evidentially that the so-called victims of this crises were not even at that location. Some of them didn't even exist. Some of them actually took people's names that had already passed away. I mean, there's just all kinds of information out there right now. You know, it's displaying the fact that there's been a lot of lies from the media. So, you know, it appears that some positive things have come out of the event. You know, there's more exposure, for the antidepressant drugs and that they cause violence, you know, things like that. But I was curious what your take is on that. What was the meaning behind it? And what do you think we've gained from it on a galactic perspective?
It brought more awareness about the situations like that one. It is quite a similar thing that we can compare it to 9/11. The event was created with negative intentions, but the end result was more awareness. So it basically follows the same pattern.
Okay. And now, how do you feel about this uprising of the gun ownership? I mean, there's a lot of evidence to show that the Second Amendment was specifically created so that we would not be handing over so much power to, well, basically now the cabal. And obviously that's not the answer stepping into 5D, but it seems to be creating a lot of like there's sheriffs apparently in Florida that are banding together, and they're refusing for the state to allow them to take this so-called amendment opportunity away from them. I mean, what is your feeling on that?
I would say this increase in gun ownership is a natural psychological response of human beings that want to be free. They feel more and more oppression from the controlling forces. And of course, the first natural response is to defend themselves. So it's a natural psychological reaction. This will continue to grow until up to the point where the light forces, the positive light forces, will liberate the planet. And of course, then people will not need those guns any longer. because they will be free and they will be safe.
I think I remember a while ago another very strong teacher on the internet was saying that there would be a period of time where no shots would be fired literally because they would not function. Is that correct?
I would say at a certain moment, at a certain point of technological mastery of the light forces on the surface of the planet, this is exactly what will happen.
Well, that's good. And I also felt that the exposure of all the false reportings by the media was another benefit that came out of this. And I was wondering what you thought about that. Have we as a light force faction, have we infiltrated the media more? Because that seems to be a large complaint amongst the people that are up there reading the conspiracy theory and the spiritual community forums and that kind of thing.
There are many layers to this. The first layer is the control over the mass media, which is still in the hands of the cabal. And there is a little bit of cracks in the matrix regarding this, but not much yet. And the second layer is covering the alternative media, and this is the disinformation agents which are being paid to spread disinfo on so-called alternative websites. So we have different layers of control and I would say information war, which is taking place right now on the surface of the planet. And there is not much real info out there, even on those alternative sites.
That is so true. And that's one of the reasons I was motivated to do this with you. You know, people have come up and asked me to do this with you as well. So I really thank you. You're such a service to humanity, and I just want to thank you for that. Now, obviously, the next huge topic in February has been the Russian meteor. And there have been so many stories. I mean, everything from, a UFO shot it down to there's a lot of different stories on how many people were actually injured. There was even one report that said that there was this weird slime, kind of a green slime that was left behind the meteor. So many different stories, all these green fireballs lighting up the skies. Can you give us a little bit of feedback on what you think's going on there?
Okay, I know what's going on up there.
Up there, that's true, up there.
Yes, so the situation is that the Galactic Confederation has allowed a natural body which is on a collision course with a planet to slip through the protection membrane. Usually they protect the planetary surface from any harmful impact. But this time they decided to let it through, and the reason was the awakening of human masses. And this is what happened. They just allowed this natural body to go through that protection membrane and hit the planet. And it was a natural object. It was nothing artificial. It was not influenced. Its trajectory, its path was not influenced by an UFO. It was just allowed to take its natural course. And the reason it was allowed was that because it was few hours before the passage of another cosmic body very close to the Earth, so people will begin to think that is not a coincidence. People will begin to awaken. This is exactly what happened. Now that you have thousands or maybe even millions of people looking up in the sky for meteors. You have reports from all over the planet because people are aware of this phenomenon. Those things are happening all the time. You had those very, very, very bright meteors happening every few days anywhere around the planet. But nobody was noticing that. And the reason for this is that people were not aware of it, but now people are aware of it and they are noticing it, and this is preparing their consciousness for the first contact. And of course, there are many more cosmic events coming later this year, and I might be able to speak about that later. So the basic story is that this cosmic body has hit the Earth. There were around 1,000 people wounded, but I would say vast majority of those wounds were surface wounds which have been healed in hospital in a few hours. people were able to go home. So there was not that much damage compared to what could have happened.
Oh, I bet. And, it's interesting you say that because I was talking to someone the other day. We have had so many crazy, massive Earth changes, but considering that, the loss of life has been very minimal.
Yes, it's true. This is the protection of the light forces. This is an example, a display of their power, what they can do to protect humanity. And one interesting thing, this event has happened on the day of the start of the London conference.
Interesting.
And one more interesting thing is that the passage of the second asteroid on that date has happened in the exact few minutes when we started the conference.
Oh my! So it was like a loud knock on the door to you, huh?
Oh yeah, it was a big synchronicity.
Oh, that's amazing. So all this stuff about the U.S. weapons testing and...
No.
That's all ridiculous.
Yeah, it's all ridiculous. You see, every major event produces a few conspiracy theories. Some of them are correct, and most of them are not.
Was this one original meteor and then fragments were landing in Russia and Cuba, San Francisco, and was that one from the one original meteor, or were those different meteors?
As I said before, there was one cosmic body hitting Russia, and as I said before, there are many meteors, very, very bright meteors happening, I would say, every few days. People fail to notice them because they're not aware, but now people are more aware.
So this is going to continue to increase.
This is going to continue to increase, especially if people keep that awareness.
That makes a lot of sense. And now, why would they be green? Why would they have green fireballs lighting up the sky?
It is not always green color, but the green color is the color which is produced by the friction between the meteor and the air molecules in the atmosphere.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that because they've actually reported them as blue and as green.
In most cases, they are green.
Okay, interesting.
But you also can have other colors.
Well, now explain this to me as well. At the same time that the meteor was striking the Earth, there was a report of 100,000 dolphins off the coast of the United States. What would be the reason for that?
Dolphins are sending us a very powerful message. And that is the message of awakening, which has many different layers. It's like a reminder, a call, I would say an alarm clock going off.
That makes sense too. So basically everything on the planet is just trying to kind of like tap us on the shoulder and say, hello, wake up here. We're all here working together with you.
As you know, you had another sign that lightning that struck the dome of St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome a few hours after the Pope resigned.
I was going to ask you about that too. You beat me to the punch. Well, how about this? God, this was amazing. Another report on the 19th was that there were some new sunspots that were 6 times the diameter of the Earth, and they formed in literally under 48 hours. So I was curious what you thought about that.
Well, this is a natural sign of increased sun activity because now we're at the peak of the sun activity cycle, and it's quite a natural occurrence. This happens quite often when the sun is active.
I read somewhere that the sunspots actually represent the male psyche, and the earthquakes and things like that represent the female psyche. Is that true? What do you feel about that?
Well, this is just one way of explaining the symbolism of those structures. Actually, the sunspots are, I would say, areas on the sun surface which are a little bit cooler. And actually, they are hyperdimensional doorways through which certain spaceships with the right technology can enter towards the center of the sun and then teleport through that wormhole through other dimensions, to other parts of the universe.
When I first read that, I was just shocked.
Yeah, you have to have pretty amazing technology to do that.
Yeah, amazing. And apparently it's pretty cool in the sunspot location, right?
Cooler, but it's very hot considering our standards.
Of course. But I just meant like the sunspot itself is actually supposed to be cooler than the outer layer of the sun itself.
Yes.
And so when supposedly the ships fly in and out through these sunspots, and that's what I was going to ask you, is if it got that large, is that also representing that there's a larger contingency of UFOs coming into our realm? Is that representing that?
No, it's just a natural activity of the sun, which is actually reflecting an increased activity from the galactic central sun.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, my next thing is all about the Pope. My God, there's been so much information in February about that, the resignation of Pope Benedict, and the lightning striking the Basilica. A lot of controversy on why this was happening, why it took place the way it did. Was he fired by the Knights of Malta? Was he running away for his life? I mean, there are so many stories out there. He apparently contacted the Italian president, Giorgio Napolitano, asking for secured protection and immunity from the Italian government. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
This is just the last phase of the long struggle which was taking place in Vatican between various factions. And Pope got a lot of exposure in the media in the last few months, and this is the reason why he got fired, because his image was getting too dirty for the tastes of Vatican, and they have decided to get rid of him. And of course, he did a little bit of maneuvering to protect himself, and this is why he contacted the Italian president. As you probably know, the Pope is not the highest person in the power structure of the Vatican, and he has his superiors, which most of them are Jesuits, and some of them are even higher than that, like the Roman black nobility, and they are the ones who actually choose who the Pope is and how long he is going to be a Pope. So he was ordered to step down.
Okay, so you agree he was actually kind of fired, as they say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, are these Jesuits one and the same with the Knights of Malta?
Not exactly. Knights of Malta is like I would say a military occult order which serves as a vehicle for the Jesuits to do trade and to contact Illuminati.
Ah, that makes more sense. Okay. And I also read somewhere that the Pope was fingered for being involved in the 9/11 and the 3/11 situation. Do you agree with that?
Not exactly, because there are many people with dirty hands around in Vatican. He was simply too exposed in the media. His public image was not clear enough anymore. So he did not serve the purpose of Vatican any longer.
Okay. And I can't get over, every day I blog, Cobra, it seems like there's something about the Vatican. And I also wanted to know, they're really stepping up on their declaration that the ETs are real. And there's been a ton of information coming out about what's really being stored in the vaults below the Vatican. I was wondering if you had any feedback on that.
Actually, it's a purification process. The light forces are going to exert more and more pressure on the Vatican. This is going to increase. Especially next month, you will see some interesting developments in this Vatican story. Because the light forces have decided that it's enough is enough, and certain things have to change. And we are actually approaching slowly, of course, but we are approaching the event horizon, and those things have to be cleared.
Are you finding that of all of the factions on the planet, are they the worst, the most difficult? Are they the most intransigent?
They are at the core of the conspiracy. I would say the Roman black nobility, so-called archons, and the Jesuits are at the top of the pyramid. at the top of the food chain. And when they are removed, our planet is free.
Interesting. Now, what about the fact that people couldn't even access money?
Yes, it was an interesting development because actually the credit cards were blocked for a certain period of time in Vatican. This is also part of the power struggle at the very top of the hierarchy of the cabal over the control of the financial system.
Because I know apparently there's been a lot of scuttlebutt on the money laundering that's been run through the Vatican, and that got exposed.
I would say a tiny fraction of 1% have been exposed. There is so much more.
Oh my God!
Actually, the Vatican owns the Federal Reserve through hundreds or even thousands of small companies who are. It's like a network of small companies around the planet, everywhere, and they are mostly they are very, very, very developed in South America, in Central America, in strange countries in Africa. You have tiny little companies which are completely under Jesuit control, and through that interconnectedness of those companies, the Jesuits actually own the Federal Reserve and not the Rothschilds.
Wow. Are these companies aware of this, or is it just kind of more of a mind-controlling issue?
These are like fronts, like shell companies. They're just instruments of control.
Got it. You know, I read an interesting quote here. It says, "Nobody becomes pope without a sordid past, because only with such liabilities can he be controlled by the curia. It's the same in any big company." And it says here he was to be the scapegoat for all of the trash that the church knew would surface. And they said knew would surface. So it seems like they've always been one step ahead, knowing. I mean, there are articles out there that state that Pope Benedict had already been discussing when he would be leaving a couple of years ago. So what do you think about that?
This is very true. Actually, the real masters of the game are always in the background. And the public figures get all the exposure and all the hatred and all the consequences of the actions of those in the background.
Oh, God. And they know this before they walk into this position?
Well, they are aware of this to a certain degree, but you see, many people have this appetite for power or fame, and this overrides their logical reasoning. Apart from saying that most members of the cabal have not much of a logical reasoning remaining.
Right. Well, and you also know, I'm sure you're aware, that a lot of Catholic cardinals have been busted for child abuse. Like the whole child abuse case has been completely blown open by I think it's the ITCCS website. Yeah, and that's been pretty impressive. Is this also part of the light force's way of giving them a sign, like, you know, you only have so much more time or else kind of thing, you know, through an indirect way of saying things?
It's a different story. It's actually an action of the light forces to expose what's happening so that the human population will become more aware of the crimes of those people. And again, this is just a start. This is just a tip of the iceberg. Much, much, much more of this is coming to the surface.
So now, why do you feel the Vatican is so, for example, I mean, almost, I would say every other couple of days, I'm seeing how the Vatican is now mentioning that UFOs exist. And I know that they have in the past, but it's really stepped up. And I'm just wondering, why now? Why is this occurring now? Is it just the energetics of the times, or is it because the light forces are really, you know, are they appearing to them? Are they putting pressure on them?
It's not appearing just through Vatican. Also, the Bilderbergers and actually all factions of Illuminati are in their own way preparing for disclosure because they are realizing they will not be able to hold that back much longer. And they will have to adapt to the situation one way or the other. And they want to be those who are controlling and dictating how this disclosure will happen, and they want to twist it in a way that they will suit their agenda.
Now, I remember, Cobra, at the conference you had with all of us in November, you mentioned something about how Obama was going to be, what was the word you used? Sooner or later he would be kind of turned on and he would start to step into his mission. Has that occurred yet?
No.
Okay. I thought so. Okay. Well, is there anything else that you can enlighten us on the Pope stories in the Vatican?
As I said, this is just the beginning. And again, March will be very interesting regarding Vatican. There are many things being prepared by the light forces for March, many surprises for the Vatican, for the Jesuits, for the Catholic Church. It will be interesting. If everything goes according to the plans, and I cannot guarantee that, but most likely it will, March is going to be a very interesting month regarding the actions of the Catholic Church.
Ooh, that's exciting. Okay. Now, the next big story has been about North Korea. And I have read that North Korea is actually, behind closed doors, an ally to Japan. So I was curious what your feeling was about the so-called explosion of the nuclear device. I thought you had mentioned at one time that would never be allowed. So is this just strictly disinfo?
There was an explosion, but it was not a nuclear explosion.
So was this deliberate?
It was a testing that the military does, but it was not a nuclear explosion. And it's true that there are alliances being made right now around the planet. It's a big shift of power. People are searching for new connections, new alliances. This is happening daily right now.
I noticed that as well. And I was wondering, we've been brought up in the United States to see China, Russia, North Korea, and a few of the countries in the Mideast as our absolute enemies. These are the people. I'm not talking on a personal level. I'm just saying from one country to another. And it just seems like those same countries seem to be making the most advances and stepping up to the plate to comment on disclosure and working, like the BRIC, the Brazil, Russia, India, China. They seem to be very aggressive in putting together some programs that are more involved and more concerned about humanitarian causes. What is your feeling about that?
Again, there are many layers to this. The first thing I would like to notice is that the countries which are most hated in the United States are the countries without the Rothschild central bank. So this was always a problem for some of the controlling forces in the United States, but also elsewhere on the planet. And now this is changing because there is a so-called Eastern Alliance, which is getting stronger and stronger day by day. But this Eastern Alliance has its own internal struggles, people struggling for power, the same story happening again. And this is one of the reasons why the financial reset hasn't happened yet. And they might be issuing some humanitarian projects, but those projects have not been yet manifested in reality. Because when there is a real will and dedication and determination to change things on this planet, this can happen extremely fast.
Interesting. God, this is such an exciting time to be alive. Anyway, now what about this big, gigantic sinkhole in Louisiana? It's now grown to over 7,500 square feet. You get a lot of stories about it being from the salt caverns to the oil and gas pipelines. What is your feeling on that?
First, I would say this is not the only sinkhole. There are many, many sinkholes around the planet. Some of them are natural, some of them are artificial, and some of them are being made deliberately by the resistance movement just as another sign of awakening.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Now, what about the gold? You know, everybody's following the gold, and a lot of stories are coming out that Russia and China, I guess they say China's the number one holder of gold, and Russia has now just stepped up into the second position of holding the most gold on the planet. What is your feeling about that, and what are the connotations of that regarding the United States economy?
Okay, there are many layers to this again. There are the official stories in the mass media, of course, the fabrication inside the mass media. Then there are fabrications in the alternative media, the disinfo stories there. But actually, nobody knows where the gold is, because the gold is not any longer on the surface of this planet. You have gold-plated tungsten bars in the central banks, and this is basically all that you have. Where is the money? Where is the gold? This is the questions I would like to ask to people. Think about it. Everybody's speaking about the collateral accounts. Everybody's speaking about Saint Germain Trust. The question is, where is the money? Everybody's speaking about trillions of dollars, and nobody has ever seen them. I know there are pictures circulating over the internet, and if I just add up all that gold, you would get maybe a few thousand tons.
Interesting. So is the gold being held on a dimensional level? Explain that to me.
The gold was actually taken by the resistance last year, about 1 year ago, and is waiting in a certain location for the right time to be given to humanity. And of course, the condition that the resistance gave is you have to make an agreement what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And the Eastern Alliance had a great opportunity in February last year, but they were not able to make a consensus. So sorry about that one.
Yeah, bummer. And you feel, I know you've said this over and over, you feel that the money is not going to be available until after the event horizon?
The money will not be available until after the event, because the cabal will have control over the money until the very last possible moment. This is their last resort of power. They will release everything else before the money. Because if you have the money, you can change things. People are not broken, they are not penniless without a reason. And the reason being, if they don't have the money, they cannot do anything. They cannot create projects. They cannot develop free energy devices. They cannot launch rockets. They cannot create private spaceships. They cannot do whatever they want to do.
Yes, launch the City of Light in my case. Yes. So, wow, that's pretty interesting. Well, okay, so if that's the case, how is this impacting the cabal?
Well, the cabal now still has the surface of the planet, but not for much longer, because the resistance movement made great advances below the surface and is now actually, there are more and more agents on the surface day by day. Today we have, I think it's around 37,000.
Wow.
And the number is growing hour by hour. Basically saying the resistance has enough, and they will be making stronger and stronger pushes towards the event.
You know, that came up at your conference too. I mean, what do you do when someone approaches you and says, you know, I want to be part of this resistance? Is there a process or a protocol involved?
At this moment, the resistance operatives are not contacting the surface population, because that would put that person in danger. When the cabal would find out about it, it would not be funny. So they are not contacting anybody on the surface. They are just negotiating daily by the top members of the cabal, and the results of those negotiations are sometimes more advanced of the light forces. But it's a long and dedicated process, because of course, the humanity as a mass is still the main hostage.
Yes.
The lives of 7 billion people, the well-being of 7 billion people.
Yes.
And the cabal still has pretty much quite much of a power and ability to create harm if it wants. So we have to be careful still. And the resistance is impatient. They are getting angry, but they are still careful.
Yeah.
They don't want unnecessary suffering on the planet.
I can imagine. Well, and do you still feel that the nuclear card is being pulled? I mean, I've read that, but then I've also heard you and several others say that the nuclear thing will not be tolerated. So there's conflicting information on that spectrum. Can you clarify that?
Not only that it will not be tolerated, the light forces have a technology to effectively block all nuclear technology.
Aha. Okay. So basically anything we read regarding a threat that has to do with nuclear weapons is a bunch of BS.
Yes, and they use that as a disinformation tactic, and of course not everybody knows this, and not even everybody inside the cabal knows this. People deep inside the military know this. They have seen proofs of this, but I don't even know if the President of the United States has confirmed facts about this. It is on need-to-know basis.
True. Well, okay, so how are we doing with the meditations? Do you feel that this is really increasing the light quotient on the planet?
It's not really increasing. It is, I would say, stable. There is, I would say, a stable and dedicated group that is doing a very good thing, but that group is far too small.
Okay, so you still need more people.
Much more people.
Okay. Well, everybody, you guys hear that, right? We all have to start meditating more. And it's every Sunday, correct?
Every Sunday, every Sunday, I think it's 7 p.m. London time.
Okay. Now, what is the story, Cobra, behind Mali? What is really going on there? I mean, what you hear is all these crises about Islamist rebels and they want to seize the country. What's really going on there other than I did read that they were trying to capture oil out of Nigeria, but that's about all I've been able to find.
Of course, one layer of wars in Africa is always about the resources.
Correct.
The thing that's happening there, especially in Africa, is about the resources because that continent is very rich in resources. And the other level is the psychological control of that population, and the cabal is using, actually the cabal has created Islamist groups to use them as a tool in their wars.
Okay. And so are they after, is there something to do with like a Stargate there as well?
No. Actually, there is a Stargate, but the cabal does not know where it is because it's below ground.
Okay.
It is connected with a Sirius star system.
Oh, really? Serious? Okay.
Yes.
And I mean, are they succeeding, or are they running into a lot more obstacles than they have in the past? It seems like because of the times and energies accelerating, they would be running into a lot more problems.
Who?
The cabal.
The cabal, as I said before, is still pretty much controlling the surface. So they have problems, but they can still manage to handle them right.
Okay, and then now, what is your whole thing about all of these pyramids? My God, 35 pyramids showed up in Sudan. Another ancient pyramid dated 3,000 years ago showed up in Egypt. There's a bunch of them, and I was wondering what you thought about that.
You might say there is an energy grid around the planet, and those pyramids were located, or shall I say, built on those vortex points thousands of years ago. And simply because the awareness of the planet is rising, this is the reason why people are discovering more and more of those pyramids. And as people are becoming more aware of those pyramids, they are more aware of the energy grid. And this, of course, helps with the planetary liberation process.
Correct. And of course, the awareness. It's once again, it's like the Earth itself is talking to us and trying to get our attention. Yeah.
Yes.
And now, what is your opinion of all of the massive amounts of lawsuits going down against the bankers? I mean, there's too many to even name, but one of the biggest was the Royal Bank of Scotland. They just got nailed, and God, even I don't know. There's just been so many, I couldn't even keep track of them all.
I would say this is a dedicated operation of the light forces. It's a very methodical way of exposing the bankers and diminishing their power.
Excellent. Now, a lot of people will argue with that and say, oh, this is just a drop in their bucket.
It's not true. Every ounce of, every tiny little bit of progress is more than nothing.
I agree.
And the only thing we need is their determination and dedication. I would say it again, the Rothschilds had time. They had 200 years of dedication to create what they wanted. And we need to have the same determination they had. We will not need 200 years to manifest what we want, but we need just a little bit of that determination to be successful.
And resilience.
Yes.
Yeah, don't give up before the final call, as they say.
And we're getting closer day by day.
We are. I mean, I see it because of blogging every day. I can really see the progress that's being made. And the fact that people are really starting to stand up. And a lot of these protests have not been violent at all.
Actually, non-violent protests have much more power because they create a much more powerful resonance field.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm really proud of the people on the planet, is what I'm saying, is, they haven't gone crazy and, shot a bunch of people down or anything. They've really band together as a united force for whatever that cause is that they feel passionate enough to bring about.
Yes, people have been able to maintain peace and calm in many situations.
I think so, too. It's, that really shows the change in the energies. I mean, big time. Now, I've really been wanting to ask you this, Cobra. I had to find out if this had to do with the resistance. The Federal Reserve actually admitted that they had been hacked on the 7th of February. What is your take on that?
Well, it's hard not to admit that because it was quite obvious.
But in the old days, they would have gone through the whole disinformation game.
Yes, but they discovered that sometimes admitting something is a good distraction tactic. Now everybody has forgotten about it.
This is true. But then you've got the CIA admitting that they are truly, fully monitoring Facebook, Google, YouTube, and all the other networks. They're coming forward and saying, okay, yeah, we're doing it.
Well, I think this is not news for anybody who has a little bit of information. Actually, NSA is monitoring every email, every phone call, every conversation for many years, and it was all in the mass media.
That's true.
10 years ago, it was in the mass media. All this information was there.
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, a couple people have asked me about this. Have you heard about this malware thing flying around? What it does is it'll hit specific websites that have alternative content. So if you're challenging, the Matrix, if you're making any kind of statements about that, they will actually target your website, and a little sign will come up if you access the URL, and it'll say, oh, danger, this is malware, you don't want to come to the site, and it won't even allow them to gain entrance to it. Do you have any recommendations for those people that are trying to get the information out, that are against the grain of the cabal, what we can do to protect ourselves? Like, do you have any suggestions from the standpoint of software or anything like that?
My suggestion would be to diversify. You can create a blog, a Facebook group, a Twitter account, many different outlets for the same information, and they will not be able to cover everything. And of course, in this age of internet, everything goes viral pretty quickly.
That's a really good point. Now, how about this question? I did have another question for you, and that was, there have been a couple of emails that have come out about HAARP. And I know you've been very passionate about saying that HAARP no longer exists. There was a very impressive one. The woman was a scientist, and she put together a phenomenal presentation and everything. I sent it over to you and went around the internet, and I could just feel the anxiety within the community. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, I would need to check that email to answer that question.
Okay. But you had said before that you felt that the HAARP technology has been brought to its knees. Is that correct?
Yeah, the physical HAARP has been shut down, but you have the etheric HAARP, which has pretty much the same effect. Because the etheric plane is very close to the physical, and the etheric HAARP does have effect on the physical body.
Okay. Well, so then it could be happening on an etheric level.
That is still happening.
Okay.
It is happening less than it was, but it is still happening.
Well, that's not good. Now, there's also been some discussion about full-blown UFO wars. There have been a lot of videos coming across my desk. They're actually catching a UFO being shot down. And I was just curious what your take is on that. Is it of our government? Did they come into our airspace and it's the good guys? What do you think?
Okay, most of those reports are disinformation reports. As most of the UFO pictures that you can find on the internet are also fake.
Oh, wow.
There is a small number of incidents when the light ships have been appearing, and the military tried to shut them down. Of course, they cannot, but it was a little bit of display of fire going in different directions, that's all.
Oh, okay. So you're saying pretty much most of the UFO sightings and things like that are not for real?
I would say most of the pictures and videos are not for real. There are many sightings that are real, but things that you can see on YouTube, most of those are fake.
Is that from the disinformation agents? I mean, is that what they're doing all day long? Is just, what are they gaining from that? I don't really get that.
Yeah, there is a special operation by CIA to create as many fake UFO sightings as possible to cover the real ones.
Why?
So people are confused and they don't know which one is real and which one is not.
Okay. Doesn't make sense, but I guess I understand.
The reason is, of course, the cabal wants to suppress the evidence of life out there. This is one of their main driving factors, their main motivations in life, to suppress that.
Okay. Well, and I had just a couple more questions. Hey, what did you think about the announcement that the Pope, the Queen, the Canadian Prime Minister, they were all charged with crimes against humanity? This was through the International Court of Law, and
yes. It is true. This has been done, but this has to be enforced.
Okay.
For this to become reality, and who is going to enforce this? That's the question.
Is it true that they are kind of like scurrying away and they're in the hiding and they're running to places like Fiji?
No.
That was something that came out. And I'm not sure if you read Ben Fulford's last email.
Oh, yes, it was very interesting because he has mentioned some changes in the United Kingdom happening days after we have activated the London City Vortex financial. We have actually triggered a transformation of the financial system on the etheric plane. And a few days later, Ben Fulford is speaking about the changes in UK regarding this. This is very interesting.
Well, that's great, because that's what I was going to ask you about. I could not believe the turn face where the United Kingdom was now willing to work with the Chinese renminbi. Is that what it is?
Yes.
And so you felt this was in direct correlation to the conference itself.
I would say it was interesting because we have activated the vortex. It was last Saturday, And Ben was speaking about the events happening 3 days after that Saturday.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, and then he was also talking about there's been just a ton of moves with, it says here, Japan, Russia, Europe, South America, Africa, and United States. So you're saying basically all these guys are kind of scrambling and resetting their networks of who they want to align themselves with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but they will not come to the final conclusion soon. This will just continue for some time, shifting alliances.
Okay. Well, I have so much more, but those are the biggies that I kind of wanted to review for the month of February, and I'll be talking to you at the end of March, and boy, I'm sure we'll have a lot of good stuff to go over then. Is there anything else you can add to give people some insight into the progress, the unobvious progress of the light forces?
I would say that most of the real action is not being reported because all the real action must happen undisclosed, at least at this stage. So when a certain operation is completed, then I can report about it. But there are many things happening in the background that will have long-lasting consequences in the future. What is interesting that we're going to have the March conference in Rome right about the time where the new Pope is going to be elected. So this is another interesting coincidence, or I would say, yes, I would call it coincidence.
Yeah.
Well, and what is your feeling about this new Pope? They're suggesting that he may be an African American, and supposedly that goes way back to the Egyptian times. And
well, the Cabal's choice, the Jesuits' choice is Cardinal Bertone, so he is the most likely candidate. But of course, there is possibility for surprises. The light forces have their own plans, and it will be an interesting story. We'll see what happens.
I know this could be like a book, like you could not put it down if you were reading it. It's an amazing times right now. Okay, well, Cobra, as usual, thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you in a month from now. Everybody else, take care, keep the faith, don't lose your hope, and continue meditating. And we will see you around this time next month.
Okay, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.